a 12-year-old boy from Portland charged with stabbing a 13-year-old girl in their community. A 75-year-old man charged with the murder of his 57-year-old sister in St. Anne. And an 85-year-old man from Hanover charged after allegedly confessing to murdering an 80-year-old Patsy Allen and her 73-year-old caregiver, Tika Anderson Nesbeth. One of them was his spouse. All of these are so-called domestic violence incidents, all adding to the dreadful crime data in Jamaica. And nothing at all is being done to rein in domestic violence incidents. Nothing at all. Good day. This is the 85th episode of the Frankly Speaking Jamaica podcast. Thank you for joining us again. Please subscribe if you haven't yet done so. Please. And share this podcast with your friends and associates interested in Jamaica's public affairs. Winnie Anderson Brown says schools are not ready if they are not ready for AI. Desmond Richards also takes part in this podcast. But first, my commentary. Frankly speaking, as I and many others have observed ever so often, heinous, barbaric, dastardly, and even incredible acts of violence have taken place in Jamaica. They sear the conscience, draw outrage, and are quickly forgotten. We don't have time to reference even the most recent of them, but Daniel Rowe and the slaughter and rape of a 9-year-old in Hanover are two of the latest. Then, of course, the firebombing of houses in Gregory Park within 3 miles of a police station, St. Catherine. In the past week, two events troubled me greatly, and they too throw up questions about the Jamaican character, about the normalizing of brute behavior in our society. The first was the arrest and charge of a 12-year-old boy for the stabbing of a 13-year-old girl in his community in Hope Bay, Portland. Yes, country. I know better than to judge the case. Frankly speaking, all I ask is, if the police report is true, what are we to think? The police report said, when the boy first attacked the girl, adults intervened and took away a machete. And then the boy went and retrieved a knife which he used to stab the girl. Did nobody see that coming? If what happened is true. What I found worse, frankly speaking, is a report, again, that a woman was slain August 12th in a community near Discovery Bay in St. Anne. She is 57-year-old Lynette Brady. Police have arrested her brother, 72-year-old Stanley Brady, for her murder. Her brother. They have the same name even. All reports I have been able to come about suggest that there was a long-running row between them over land. It came to a head on Saturday, August 12, when the brother journeyed to St. Anne from St. Catherine. Again, a quarrel. Police said he attacked her with a machete and inflicted wounds to her body in her house. She escaped and ran and collapsed in a neighbor's house. The community heard what happened and set upon and beat and chopped Mr. Brady. The two siblings were taken to hospital. She was pronounced dead and he was held on the police guard and charged days later. The police have said domestic disputes or quarrels between and among neighbors and in families, among siblings, father and son even, are major killers in Jamaica. In rural parishes, they account for between 30 and 60% of the murders. Frankly speaking, we haven't even bothered to provide much data on the numbers wounded and the cost to society, including to the hospitals, the time and resources used there, and the loss in production for the nation. Frankly speaking, nothing has been done about dealing with domestic violence, including murders, in a sustained and results-driven way with the required infrastructure. It needs a proactive social agency or grouping and some robust, articulate community involvement where people can feel assured and empowered and encouraged that they can report simmering disputes, flare-ups, even threats that could bubble over into violence and murder. And it doesn't take much, frankly speaking. It takes will and vision and organizing by a government agency. Look, we need to provide communities with a violence prevention commission or community committee or whatever you want to call it, or council. It can start as a unit at the parish level or in each police area. And those can be broken down into smaller units or sub-branches. Frankly speaking, use on the committees, the JPs or lay magistrates, include school leadership, principals, board chair, use service club heads and business leaders and other organized groups in the community. Use reps from the SDC and from the community. Go for pastors and guidance counselors. Attach to them police leadership. Involve heads of uniform groups, cadets, guides, pathfinders. Make available to these councils social workers, well-trained social workers and mediators. They must have dedicated, secure, confidential phone lines and service the groups or councils with workers, social workers, not profilers. Keep politicians away for the starters. Make available a space, even at the police stations, where the council or commissions can meet regularly and decide on interventions, community talks, walkabouts, involvement of a social worker. Get to the people with the disputes and issues before bloodshed. And now, to Desmond Richards.
Illicit enrichment by politicians is nothing new to the Jamaican political landscape. Between 1952 and 1990, 4 JLP ministers were sent to jail for stealing public funds. In 1952, Zoe Malcolm, Labour Ministry, was jailed for stealing farm tickets. 1954, L.L. Simmons, also for farm tickets. And in 1966, Arthur Burt, yes, I don't know how many listeners and viewers remember that name. He was state minister in the Ministry of Education, and he ran away while being investigated for stealing millions of dollars that was donated to Jamaica to build schools. In 1967, some of you might remember this name, Cleve Lewis. He was jailed for farm work tickets. And then in 1990, Jack Smith. Now, we know that our politicians over the years have been involved in illicit enrichment. Now, what we have in front of us now, 6 parliamentarians are named by the Integrity Commission that they are being investigated. We don't know who they are. The People's National Party has indicated that none of their MPs have been spoken to by the Integrity Commission. Last week, the Prime Minister said that those of members of his party who he has spoken to has indicated that they are not under investigation. Well, he has not spoken to all of them. But one thing we know that the Integrity Commission has indicated in its report to Parliament that 6 parliamentarians and over 20 public officials are being investigated for illicit enrichment. Now, we are not certain about the PNP's position as to whether or not these names should be made public. Its chairman, Mrs. Angela Brownberg, said that she was still sitting on the fence. So she was not sure whether or not those who are being investigated should be made public for us to know. I believe we have a right to know, because these are the lawmakers. These are persons who are supposed to be setting examples. And they are not setting examples. Therefore, what they have done, they have made laws to protect themselves, right? While we, the people, who they are supposed to serve, are left in the dark. It is totally unacceptable. The public has a right to know, and we would like to know who are these politicians.
That's Desmond Richards, journalist and founder of Rebel Radio Jamaica. And now here's Winnie Anderson Brown.
What I'm about to say may not go down well with educators, but I'll say it anyway. Any educator who has never had any interaction with a chatbot is not ready for the new academic year. And what needs to happen is that educator should go to openai.com and open an account so that that person is able to communicate with a chatbot, or use Microsoft Bing Chat, or use Google Bard. But don't allow the school year to begin without having some form of interaction with a chatbot. You're not qualified to speak to anything called plagiarism or anything called search, getting information. A chatbot is not a search engine. That's the first thing you need to learn. It is not a search engine. So it makes no sense to imagine what chatbots can do or what is available to students these days, and to yourselves, ourselves as educators. The tool that is available to us, it's important to learn how to use the tool. After using it, then we qualify to speak about it. We can have intelligent discussions about chatbots when we have used them, or when we're using them, when we know enough about them to talk about them. And in this day and age, things have changed. Don't get stuck in the past. If Google had to respond to generative AI and create its own chatbot, who are we not to respond? I invite you to get out of the dark and make sure you have your conversation with a chatbot and comment below. Make sure you do. Then we can talk.
That's Winnie Anderson Brown, educator and health facilitator. Endgame. I am proud that Jamaica has reached 4.5% unemployment. It sounds like a planet away from what we used to hear and expect. Unemployment rate in the teens and near 20%. I mentioned Denby last week in episode 84 of this podcast, and I will come back to it with a whole podcast on why it could be so much better and why it could be able to present Jamaica in a far better light. That's it for this, the 85th episode of the Frankly Speaking Jamaica Podcast. Please subscribe and like and share. We want you to share your comments too on this channel. On behalf of Desmond Richards and Winnie Anderson Brown, I'm Franklin McKnight. Until then.